Hello, my friend. This time, our story is about Nietzsche, a bold philosopher who changed the way we think about truth, morality, and life. As you listen, I invite you to relax and imagine each part of his life. This story is told in simple English, made for learners like you who love great stories. Let's begin the journey of Nietzsche. Chapter 1. A Lonely Child with Big Questions. Friedrich Nietzsche was born in a small village called Röcken in Germany. The year was 1844. He came into the world on a quiet October day. His father was a pastor, a man of the church. His mother was strong and kind. They both hoped their son would grow up to be a good and faithful man. But life changed quickly for young Friedrich. When he was just 5 years old, his father became very sick. The sickness came suddenly. It was serious and painful. Soon after, his father died. This was very hard for Friedrich. He was very close to his father. He did not understand why such a kind man had to die. 1 year later, something worse happened. Friedrich's little brother also died. He was only 2 years old. The house became quiet and full of sadness. Friedrich, his mother, and his sister tried to stay strong. But something changed in Friedrich. He became quiet and serious. He started thinking about life and death. He did not play much with other children. He liked to be alone. He liked reading and writing. He read books that were too hard for most children. He listened to music for hours. He thought about big questions. He asked himself, why do people suffer? And is there a meaning in life? People around him noticed his deep thoughts. Some called him strange. Others said he was special. At school, teachers saw he was different. He was quiet, but his mind was sharp. He learned quickly. He remembered details that others forgot. Even when he was sad, he worked hard. As he grew older, Friedrich often felt alone. He missed his father. He felt far from the world around him. But he had books, music, and his own thoughts. These became his closest friends. The pain he felt in childhood never fully left him. It stayed in his heart, and it became part of the way he saw the world. That pain would also become part of his writing many years later. But at this time, he was still just a boy, a lonely child with big questions in his mind. Chapter 2. Early Life. The Boy from Rocken. After his father's death, Friedrich's family moved to a nearby town called Naumburg. He lived there with his mother, his younger sister Elizabeth, and several women from his mother's family. There were no other men in the house. Friedrich was the only boy. He often felt like a visitor in his own home. The women were kind, but they did not always understand him. In Naumburg, Friedrich went to a local school. He was quiet and polite. He did not get into trouble. He followed the rules. But inside, he was still full of big questions. He wondered about God, time, and the meaning of life. He asked questions his teachers could not answer. He started to write his own thoughts in notebooks. He also read more than most boys his age. By the time he was 10 years old, people saw that he was special. He had a deep love for music, books, and language. He was not strong in sports or games, but his mind was powerful. He could read in Latin and Greek. He studied poetry and religion. He wrote short pieces that showed strong feelings and clear thinking. When he was 14, Friedrich received a scholarship to a famous school. It was called Skulpforta. This school was known for discipline and hard work. Many future leaders had studied there. His family was proud of him. They believed he would become a great man, maybe a pastor, like his father. At Skulpforta, Friedrich studied many subjects. He read classical texts and wrote essays. He worked from morning to night. The school was strict. Students had to follow a tight schedule. There was not much free time. But Friedrich liked this structure. It gave him peace. It also gave him time to think deeply. During these years, Friedrich became close to poetry and music. He started writing poems about nature, dreams, and pain. He also began to compose music. His songs were soft, sad, and full of feeling. Music helped him express what he could not say in words. He also started to doubt some of the things he learned in church. He read books that questioned religion. He asked himself, is faith something I truly believe, or is it just tradition? These thoughts were hard for him. He wanted to honor his father's memory, but he also wanted to find his own truth. His teachers saw that he was not just a good student. He was someone who thought in a deep and different way. They respected him, but some also worried. He was too serious for his age. He did not laugh much. He spent hours alone in thought. He already seemed more like a philosopher than a boy. When Friedrich finished school at Schulpforta, he had many choices. He could study religion, he could study language, or he could follow the path of philosophy. In the end, he chose to study theology and classical philology at university. But even then, his heart was already searching for something deeper. He was looking for a new way to understand life. Chapter 3. A Mind Beyond His Years. In 1864, when Nietzsche was just 20 years old, he entered the University of Bonn. At first, he studied theology. His family hoped he would become a pastor like his father. But Nietzsche's heart was not fully there. He found the church lessons too strict. He had too many questions. Soon he left theology and focused on classical philology. This was the study of ancient languages like Greek and Latin. He studied hard and read ancient texts with care. He loved the world of old books and deep ideas. He wanted to understand how people thought thousands of years ago. He wanted to know how their stories and values shaped human life. The old writings helped him think in new ways. After 1 year, Nietzsche moved to the University of Leipzig. There he met a famous professor named Friedrich Ritschl. Ritschl saw Nietzsche's great talent. He said Nietzsche was not just a good student. He said, "This young man thinks like a grown scholar." He helped Nietzsche get special support to continue his studies. At Leipzig, Nietzsche found a new interest: the work of Arthur Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer was a German philosopher. He believed that life was full of pain and struggle. He wrote about deep sadness, desire, and the meaning of human will. Nietzsche read his book and was deeply moved. He felt that Schopenhauer understood the pain inside his own heart. Nietzsche also started reading works by writers from other countries. He liked the music and writings of Richard Wagner, a powerful and emotional composer. He admired Wagner's strong ideas and his deep love for art. Later, they would become friends, but also have a painful break. In 1869, something rare and amazing happened. At just 24 years old, Nietzsche was offered a job as a professor at the University of Basel in Switzerland. This was very unusual. Most professors were much older, but Nietzsche's mind was already so sharp and deep that the university made an exception. He had not even finished his doctoral degree. Still, they knew he had something special. He accepted the job and moved to Basel. There, he taught Greek language and literature. He gave lectures on poetry, history, and ancient thought. His students respected him, but some found his ideas difficult. He was not just teaching facts. He wanted his students to think for themselves. At the same time, Nietzsche became close to Wagner and his wife, Cosima. He visited their home often. He talked with Wagner about music, art, and life. At first, they agreed on many things. Nietzsche saw Wagner as a leader of new culture. He believed that art could give life meaning. He hoped Wagner's music would help create a stronger, deeper way to live. But slowly, Nietzsche began to change. He started to think that following one man, even a great artist, was dangerous. He believed that each person must find their own truth. This would become a big theme in his later work. By now, Nietzsche was writing more. His first book, The Birth of Tragedy, came out in 1872. In it, he wrote about ancient Greek plays. He said these plays showed both light and dark parts of life. He called them the Apollonian and the Dionysian forces. One stood for order and beauty. The other stood for wildness and chaos. He believed that true art came from the balance of both. Some people loved his book. Others said it was too strange. Some scholars were angry because he mixed art and philosophy. But Nietzsche was not trying to please others. He was beginning to follow his own path. Chapter 4. The Young Professor. When Nietzsche became a professor in Basel, he was only 24 years old. He looked very young, but his mind was already full of strong ideas. He dressed simply and walked with quiet steps. His voice was calm in class. He spoke with care. His students listened closely. Some said his lectures felt like music. Others said he seemed more like a poet than a teacher. Nietzsche taught ancient Greek language and literature. He spoke about Homer, Greek plays, and philosophy. But he also wanted to talk about modern life. He asked his students to think for themselves. He told them to read with their hearts, not just with their eyes. He was different from other professors. At this time, he lived a quiet life. He rented a small room and ate simple food. He spent many hours alone. He read, wrote, and walked in nature. He also visited the Wagner family often. He felt close to them. He called Richard Wagner a true artist of the future. He believed Wagner's music had the power to change society. But soon, Nietzsche's health started to break. He suffered from strong headaches, stomach pain, and poor eyesight. Sometimes the pain was so bad that he had to lie in bed for days. He could not read or write during these times. The sickness was always there. It came and went, like a dark cloud. Still, Nietzsche did not stop working. He kept teaching. He kept writing. He wanted to understand life, not escape it. He began to write more personal thoughts. He kept notebooks where he wrote about truth, power, beauty, and pain. He started to ask, what is truth? What is good? And what does it mean to live fully? During this time, he also began to see problems in Wagner's ideas. Wagner's music had changed. It became full of German pride and Christian messages. Nietzsche did not agree with this. He wanted art to lift people beyond religion and politics. He started to pull away from the Wagner family. In 1876, he went to a music festival in Bayreuth. This festival was Wagner's great dream. But Nietzsche felt sad there. He saw people clapping for things they did not understand. He thought they followed Wagner like a god. He wrote in a letter, "This is not the future of culture. This is a show for the masses." After that, he left Bayreuth and never returned. His heart was heavy. He had lost a friend and a dream. But from this break came a new strength. He started to see his own ideas more clearly. He wanted to go deeper. He wanted to create a new way of thinking. He wanted to go beyond old ideas of good and evil. But his body was tired. In 1879, after 10 years of teaching, Nietzsche had to leave the university. His health was too weak. He was only 35 years old. He had no chi, no family of his own, and no place to call home. But he still had one thing: his mind. And he was ready to write as he never had before. Chapter 5. Illness, Pain, and Solitude. After leaving his job at the University of Basel, Nietzsche began a new part of his life. He no longer had to teach. He no longer lived in one place. He became a traveler. He moved from town to town, always looking for better weather. He hoped to ease his pain. But the illness never truly left him. He spent time in the mountains of Switzerland. He stayed in small towns in Italy. In the summer, he often went to Sils Maria. This was a quiet village high in the Alps. There he walked for hours each day. He breathed the fresh mountain air. He watched the clouds and the sunlight on the lakes. The silence helped him think. Nietzsche lived simply. He carried only a few clothes and books. He rented small rooms. He wrote each morning and rested in the afternoon. He had no family with him. He had no wife or children. But he did not complain. He once wrote, "I need loneliness to hear the deep voice inside me." His health was always weak. He had terrible headaches. His eyes hurt. Sometimes he could not read his own writing, but still, he wrote. He wrote letters, notebooks, and books. He used every bit of his strength for his work. His body suffered, but his mind stayed clear and bright. In these years, Nietzsche became more free in his thoughts. He no longer tried to please other thinkers. He began to write in a new way. His words were short and strong. He wrote in clear images. He used stories and poems. He wrote like someone speaking from a mountaintop. He sent his books to friends. Some people liked his new style. Most did not. They said his ideas were strange. They said he was too proud. They said his books were hard to understand. Nietzsche felt sad but not surprised. He once said, "My books are for the future, not for now." One of the people he still wrote to was his sister, Elizabeth. They were close as children. But now, they lived very different lives. Elizabeth had married a German man who believed in strong nationalism. Nietzsche did not agree with those ideas. He loved his sister, but he could not accept her beliefs. This caused pain between them. Nietzsche also tried to build friendships. He wrote many letters. He met a few young writers and artists, but he often felt alone. He once wrote, "I am not a man, I am dynamite." He felt that his ideas were too strong for others to handle. In this time of pain and solitude, Nietzsche wrote some of his most powerful books. He started to form a new vision of life. He believed that each person must create their own meaning. He wanted to free people from fear, from guilt, and from false morals. These ideas would soon become the heart of his work. Chapter 6. The Birth of Bold Ideas. In the early 1880s, Nietzsche began to write with new power. He had suffered much, but his ideas were growing stronger. He started to believe that life had no fixed meaning. He thought people should not just follow old rules. They should create their own path. He wanted to help others become strong and free in their minds. One of his most famous ideas was the will to power. This idea said that every living thing wants to grow, become stronger, and express itself. For Nietzsche, life was not about comfort. It was about strength, change, and courage. He said, "Life itself is a struggle." He believed that those who grow through struggle become the most alive. In 1882, Nietzsche published a book called The Gay Science. The word gay in the title meant joyful or free. In this book, he wrote short thoughts and poems. Some were happy, some were dark. One part of the book became very famous. It was the passage where a madman walks into a town and says, "God is dead." This line shocked many readers. But Nietzsche did not mean that a real God had died. He meant that people no longer truly believed in old religious values. Science and reason had changed the world. But people still acted as if the old beliefs were true. Nietzsche said this was dangerous. He believed that people needed to build new values, not live in the shadow of old ones. Around this time, he met a young Russian woman named Lou Salome. She was intelligent, strong, and full of life. Nietzsche admired her. He hoped they could be close, maybe even marry. He wrote her many letters. He shared his deepest thoughts. But Lou did not love him in the same way. She saw him as a friend. When she left, Nietzsche felt heartbroken. He became more lonely, but also more focused. He kept writing. In 1883, he began a book called Thus Spoke Zarathustra. It became one of his most famous works. In this book, he created a voice named Zarathustra. Zarathustra was like a prophet. He walked through mountains and valleys, teaching people deep truths. But the people did not always listen. Zarathustra spoke about becoming a new kind of human. He called this the Übermensch, or overman. The overman was someone who creates his own values. He is strong, free, and full of life. He does not follow old paths. He makes his own. Nietzsche believed this was the future of humanity. But most people did not understand this book. It was full of poems, stories, and strange images. Many said it was too hard to read. Nietzsche did not care. He believed that real change takes time. He wrote, "My time has not yet come." He printed the book with his own money. He sent it to friends. Few wrote back. Still, he continued to write more parts. He said, "Zarathustra is the greatest gift I have given to people." In his eyes, it was not just a book. It was a song, a dance, a light in the dark. These years were both powerful and painful for Nietzsche. His mind was alive, but his body was weak. He lived alone, moving from place to place. He had few friends. Yet, he kept writing. His bold ideas were now flowing like a river. He knew they were not for everyone, but he believed they would one day change the world. Chapter 7: Beyond Good and Evil. In 1886, Nietzsche published a new book. Its title was Beyond Good and Evil. This book was bold. It said that many moral values were no longer useful. It asked readers to look deeper into what they believed. Nietzsche did not want to destroy all values. He wanted people to question them. He asked, "Where do our ideas of good and evil come from?" Nietzsche believed that many people followed rules without thinking. He said they acted like a herd, like sheep. He called these people the herd. He believed they feared freedom. He said they followed religion or society so they would feel safe. But in doing that, they lost their true selves. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche said that we must become free spirits. Free spirits do not follow the herd. They do not accept ideas just because they are old. They look at life with open eyes. They ask hard questions. They create new ways to live. This book was a call to wake up, to live with strength and honesty. His writing style changed again in this book. It was sharp, clear, and direct. He used short phrases and strong words. He wanted his readers to feel the power of his thoughts. Sometimes he used humor. Sometimes he used anger. But he always spoke from the heart. Nietzsche also wrote about power in this book. He said that people often hide their wish for power behind kind words. For example, some people talk about love or kindness, but what they really want is control. He wanted people to see the truth behind words. He asked them to be honest with themselves. Beyond Good and Evil did not sell many copies. Only a few hundred people read it at first. Most of them did not understand it. But Nietzsche did not stop. He kept working. He believed that his readers would come in the future. He once wrote, "Some are born posthumously." He meant that he would only be truly heard after death. That same year, Nietzsche also paid to print a new edition of Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He sent it to many people, including famous writers. Most did not reply. His books brought him no money. He lived very simply. He still moved from town to town, often alone. His health stayed weak, but his mind was still full of light. Nietzsche's letters in this time show a man both strong and tired. He wrote to his few friends with care. He still hoped for deep connection, but he also accepted his solitude. He said, "The higher we rise, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." These words show how alone he felt and how far his mind had climbed. Despite the silence from the world, Nietzsche kept writing. In 1887, he wrote another book called On the Genealogy of Morality. In it, he looked at the roots of moral values. He said that what we call good often came from weakness, not strength. He believed that true morality should come from life, energy, and freedom, not from guilt or fear. In these years, Nietzsche's thoughts reached their strongest form. He believed in freedom, honesty, and the power to grow. He believed that each person could shape their own life. But his body was breaking down. His strength was running out. The light in his mind still burned bright, but it was burning fast. Chapter 8. The Man Who Spoke Like a Prophet. By the late 1880s, Nietzsche's health was getting worse. His body was weak, but his writing was at its strongest. His ideas were sharp like lightning. His books were filled with powerful images. He spoke with the voice of a prophet. Some readers began to notice the fire in his words. In 1888, Nietzsche moved to the city of Turin in Italy. He liked the calm streets and wide views. He walked every day, even when he felt sick. He lived in a small room with only a few things. He had books, paper, and a pen. That was all he needed. He wrote all day and often deep into the night. In 1 year, he wrote 5 new books. Each book was full of strong thoughts. One was The Case of Wagner, where he spoke about the famous composer Richard Wagner. Wagner was once Nietzsche's hero, but now he was his target. Nietzsche said Wagner's music was too emotional and weak. He wanted art to be strong and full of life. Then he wrote Twilight of the Idols. The title meant the end of old values. In this book, Nietzsche used short, hard-hitting chapters. He gave his opinions in clear, powerful sentences. He said many thinkers were lazy. He said religion made people small. He wanted people to wake up and live with full strength. Next came The Antichrist. This was one of his most extreme books. Nietzsche attacked Christianity. He said it was a religion of weakness, not strength. He believed it taught people to fear life instead of love it. He wrote, "Christianity is the will to nothingness." This book shocked many readers, even some of his friends. He also wrote Ecce Homo, which means "Behold the Man" in Latin. In this book, Nietzsche looked at his own life and works. He gave each chapter titles like Why I Am So Wise and Why I Write Such Good Books. Some people thought he was joking. Others thought he was serious. In truth, Nietzsche was both. He was proud of his work. He wanted the world to see him clearly. The last work he started was Dionysus Dithyrambs. It was a book of poetic songs. The writing was wild and full of strange power. These songs came from deep inside him. He felt close to the god Dionysus, the god of music, madness, and life. Nietzsche said, "I am not a man, I am dynamite." At this time, Nietzsche believed he had reached something great. He felt like a new kind of thinker. He said his words were not just ideas, they were a force. He believed the world had never seen anyone like him. He wrote letters to friends and called himself the Crucified, or Dionysus. But his mind was starting to break. In early 1889, something happened that changed everything. One day in Turin, Nietzsche saw a horse being beaten by its owner. He ran to the horse, threw his arms around it, and cried. Then he fell to the ground. After that moment, he never came back to normal life. Nietzsche's letters became strange. He wrote to kings, to friends, and to the Pope. He said he was all the great names in history. He signed letters as Caesar, the Crucified, or Dionysus. His friends were shocked. They knew something was very wrong. He was soon taken to a hospital. Doctors said he had lost his mind. They did not know why. Some believed it was from illness. Others said it was from too much stress and loneliness. Whatever the reason, Nietzsche could no longer write. The great voice had gone silent. But in his silence, his words began to spread. A few people started reading his books. Some began to understand what he had tried to say. The man who spoke like a prophet was now quiet. But his ideas were just beginning to travel into the world. Chapter 9. Madness and Silence. After Nietzsche's breakdown in Turin in early 1889, his life changed forever. His brilliant mind, once full of power and ideas, became quiet. He could no longer write. He could no longer care for himself. His long journey of thinking, writing, and creating had come to an end. At first, Nietzsche stayed in a hospital in Basel. Doctors said he had madness, but they were not sure why. Some believed it was from syphilis, a disease that was common at that time. Others thought it was from working too hard and being alone for too many years. No one could help him return to his old self. His mother, Franziska, came to take care of him. She took him back to her home in Naumburg, a small town in Germany. There she gave him food, read to him, and tried to keep him comfortable. But Nietzsche was no longer the man she once knew. He sometimes smiled or said strange things, but most of the time he sat in silence. For the next 10 years, Nietzsche lived in this quiet world. He did not write. He did not speak about his ideas. He walked in the garden, looked at the sky, or listened to music. Sometimes he played the piano with shaking hands. But his great voice, the one that once shouted against lies and weakness, was gone. In 1897, his mother died. After that, his sister Elizabeth took care of him. She moved him to a house in Weimar. Elizabeth loved her brother, but she also had her own plans. She believed his ideas should be known. She collected his papers and started to share his work with others. Sadly, she sometimes changed his words to match her own beliefs. Elizabeth wanted to show Nietzsche as a German hero, but Nietzsche had never loved nationalism. He hated racism and hated group thinking. He believed in the power of the free individual. But Elizabeth's version of Nietzsche was different. She made him seem like a prophet for strong nations and hard rules. This was not true to who he really was. Still, people began to read Nietzsche's books. Young thinkers and artists were drawn to his bold ideas. His words spread to France, Italy, Russia, and beyond. Many people now saw him as a genius. They said his voice had been too new, too strong, and too early for his time. Now the world was finally ready. During these years, Nietzsche lived in a quiet room, far from the noise of fame. He looked out the window. He listened to birds. He sometimes whispered a few words. But he never came back to his writing desk. The books were finished. The thinker had gone into deep silence. On August 25, 1900, Nietzsche died from a stroke. He was 55 years old. His body was buried next to his father's grave in Röcken, the small village where his story had begun. Only a few people came to say goodbye. But his ideas would not stay buried. They were now part of the world. The man who once walked alone, the man who asked big questions, the man who spoke like a prophet, He was now silent, but his words were alive. They were being read, shared, and studied. Nietzsche had once said, "I am not a man, I am dynamite." In the years to come, the world would begin to feel that explosion. Chapter 10. The World Finally Listens. After Nietzsche's death in 1900, his books began to travel far and wide. More and more people read his bold ideas. Writers, poets, painters, and thinkers found new meaning in his words. They said, "This man was ahead of his time." His voice, once ignored, now spoke to the whole world. In the early 1900s, Nietzsche's books were translated into many languages. His ideas crossed borders and cultures. In France, artists and philosophers loved his style. In Russia, writers found his thoughts deep and powerful. In America, young people read him in college. He had become a world thinker. But some people misunderstood Nietzsche. They used his words to support hate or violence. This happened partly because of his sister, Elizabeth. She changed his writings to match her own beliefs. She gave his books to political leaders. She said he would support their strong rule. This was not true. Nietzsche had always spoken against control, cruelty, and blind loyalty. During the 1930s and 1950s, some leaders used Nietzsche's name to support war and power. They used his idea of the Übermensch, the overman, to say that some people were better than others. But this was not what Nietzsche meant. His overman was not about race or nations. It was about rising above fear, weakness, and lies. It was about creating a strong and honest life. After World War II, scholars worked to correct this false image. They studied Nietzsche's real words. They showed how his sister had changed his work. They helped the world see the true thinker, a man who loved freedom, truth, and courage. Nietzsche's books were now taught in schools and universities. His face appeared in museums and bookstores. Many people felt that his questions still mattered. What is truth? What is good? How should we live? These questions did not fade with time. They grew stronger. Modern philosophers called Nietzsche one of the most important thinkers of the modern age. His ideas helped shape movements in art, psychology, literature, and culture. Famous thinkers like Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, and Jean-Paul Sartre said Nietzsche had opened new paths. He gave them courage to explore the mind and the soul. Nietzsche also became a symbol for young people. His books spoke to those who felt lost, alone, or different. His words gave them strength. He said, "Become who you are." This message gave hope. It said life is not just about following others. Life is about finding your own voice. Today, more than 100 years after his death, Nietzsche's ideas are still alive. His books are still printed. His quotes are shared online and in classrooms. Some people love his courage. Others fear his fire. But no one forgets his words. The world did not understand Nietzsche when he lived. But now, people from many countries listen to him. He speaks to all who want to think freely. His life, full of pain and strength, shows us a real story, a journey of thought, struggle, and deep spirit. Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." He found his why in the search for truth. And through that search, he gave something beautiful to the world. Thank you, my friend, for joining this life journey through the real story of Nietzsche. His voice may have gone silent in life, but his ideas continue to speak, to you, to me, and to learners around the world. Until our next story together, stay curious and kind.